please rise? We'll have a pledge of allegiance to the flag.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Andrew Benson. Here. Doug Dake.
Here.
Bronwyn Losi.
Here.
Joseph Wetmore.
Here.
Edward Levine.
Here. Is Guy here also?
Yes.
There he is. So, hello everyone. We've tried to, our first order of business in our packet is the introduction to the Clean Energy Communities Leadership Round, Cornell Cooperative Extension. Can anyone hear me, by the way? Yes? Okay. Cornell Cooperative Extension of Clackamas County, Terry Carroll. Is Terry Carroll there?
Yes.
How you
Hello
doing?
there. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. The floor is all yours, okay? I'll give you up to 15 minutes, so have at it.
All right, fantastic. Am I able to share my screen? I am. All right, I'm just going to share a quick presentation with all of you. So I'm here today. Oop, it said that screen sharing has failed. Give me 1 second here while I navigate this. Oh man, can't wait until this is over. All right, here we go. All right, can you see it?
Yes.
Fantastic, thank you. All right, so here today to talk to you about the Clean Energy Communities Program. You've probably seen me before. It's because I've come and presented on this program before, and it's a program that Lansing has participated in before. And so essentially it's a New York State Energy Research and Development Authority program that's there to encourage communities to implement some clean energy actions, save some costs, create jobs, and hopefully improve the environment. And so it's there to really reward leadership and recognize those that are willing to take on, the challenge of clean energy. And so my job is to work with counties, cities, and towns and villages across the Southern Tier, educate them about this program, and then if they're interested, to help them, fulfill what they want to do within the program. And there's a bunch of reasons to participate. And so in the new program, one of the big reasons to participate is that there's now $800,000 in funding earmarked specifically for the Southern Tier. And so we're going to be working with communities to try and make sure that we get that $800,000. But in addition to that, there's also a bunch of money that's in a statewide pot. And so we're going to be encouraging communities to go after that statewide funding as well. So funding a big part of it. The other part is that the actions within the program themselves are going to help save energy and in consequence, save on operational costs. And so we're going to be there to help you figure out what makes sense in terms of, is this going to save us money? Is this going to improve on energy efficiency? And that's that free technical assistance that we provide through the program. But the program itself, and of course my program then just crashed. So I can keep talking about this all day, but essentially where we're at right now is that the old program had 10 actions, and if you completed 4 out of 10 actions, you became a designated community. The way the new program works is that there's a bunch more actions in place. And now what we're looking to do is we're looking to get communities to complete enough actions that they're then able to get to these different point values. And I'll talk about that in just a second. But these are the original actions here on the left. And then on the right, you can see some of these new actions that exist. And I'll talk a little bit about them in more detail in just a minute. But in terms of the funding, there's really 3 ways to get to that funding. There's the designation grants. That's what you've already done. You've completed 4 high impact actions. You're a designated community. You have the $5,000 already. The point-based grants is what I was just talking about. You go, you complete some of these different actions, you get to different point values, and if you cross certain thresholds, you're able to then get money. And then there's the action grants. So those 2 actions that are in the bottom right, New York Stretch Energy Code and community campaigns, if you complete those actions, you'll get funding in addition to the points that are associated with them. And so as I said, program, there's some money that's earmarked specifically for the Southern Tier, and the grants are all first come, first serve. So once the grants are gone, they're gone. That's kind of how it was in the first round of the program. And that's why we saw some communities get $100,000 grants and some get $5,000 grants. So it pays to work speedily in this program if possible. And so those point thresholds we're going after are 3,000 points, 4,000 points, and 5,000 points. And so if you're able to hit these different thresholds, you're going to be able to get money on top of, for hitting those thresholds. So if you're able to get to 3,000 points, you'll be allocated a $10,000 grant. 4,000 points, $20,000 grant. 5,000 points, $70,000. And it's cumulative. So if you were able to get to 5,000, you're one of the first 4 communities in the Southern Tier to get to 5,000 points, you'd be eligible for $100,000 in grant funding. And that money has to be put towards clean energy actions that are going to help reduce greenhouse gas emissions. The other side of those action grants that I was talking about, New York Stretch Energy Code, community campaigns, and this time the funding is on a statewide level. So you're competing with communities not just in the Southern Tier, but across New York State. And so if you're one of the first 100 communities to adopt the Stretch Energy Code, you're going to receive $5,000. Similarly, if you're one of the communities that completes a community campaign action, and you're one of the first 100 to do so, you'll be awarded $5,000. And so it makes sense to maybe prioritize these actions. I'll say with the Stretch Energy Code, the town of Dryden has been discussing it. I think they're going to be voting on it in May, so keep an eye on that. Our first community to adopt the New York Stretch Code was the Village of Montour Falls over in Schuyler County. So they've just been awarded for $5,000 for doing so. And I think our next one's probably going to be either Dryden or the town of Middletown in Delaware County. So we think this will be an increasingly popular item just because it does come with funding and it's something you're going to have to do in a couple of years anyway. So in terms of Lansing, where are you at right now? Well, as I mentioned, you've participated in the program before. You are a designated community. You've completed 4 actions, and those 4 actions have gotten you 300 points so far. So a couple of the early actions, the old version of the community campaigns, the old version of the energy code enforcement training, those actions have expired, so they're not going to get you any points. But for passing the benchmarking resolution, for passing the unified solar permit, you are at 300 points. So you're not that close to 3,000 points, but you are starting ahead of the curve compared to some others that are starting at 0 points. And so if we look back at these high impact actions, you can start to see, okay, some of them are worth a lot of points. So things like the stretch code are worth 1,200 points. Sending your code enforcement officer to energy code training, the new version of it, worth 200 points. Switching your streetlights to LEDs can be worth up to 900 points. I know that's something that the town is already working on. So, there's these different things that are going on that, it makes sense to pay attention to and to see where you can get to. So in terms of the next steps in moving forward, part of it is on your end, identifying your municipal goals. Are there upgrades that you're doing to buildings, places that you want to reduce energy costs, figuring that out and then talking to us, how can it help? If you were to get grant funding, where would that grant funding go? How could it improve your buildings, your, vehicle fleet? How is the program going to intersect with some of the goals you already have? And really, how can we help you out? So, I presented this program already to Ed and to CJ and a couple members of, I forget what board it is. But Tom, and Carrie, I believe I presented to them. So, we've been talking a little bit about this. I think we've identified some early steps, but we wanted to make sure that the board understood what the program is and what it entailed, and think about kind of what next steps you might want to take. So, I think I just about hit that time limit, Ed, with a couple minutes for questions.
Yes, you're in great shape. Thank you. So does the board have any questions for Terry Crew?
I do.
Okay, go ahead, Doug.
So say we do these 4 or 5 steps, where does that funding go? Does that come to the town?
Yeah, it would go to the town. So if you qualified for a point threshold grant or one of the action grants, that would be funding that would come to the town directly.
So that funding goes to the town, and is the town required to give that back to residents, or what's that for?
No, so that funding can be used. So there's a set of pre-approved projects that it can be used for. So it can be used for, changing out your streetlights to LEDs, improving your buildings in terms of energy efficiency or replacing old heating systems, putting in a charging station or buying an electric vehicle, those are the pre-approved projects, really easy to put the funding towards. You basically fill out a form and say, hey, we're going to spend the money this way. NYSERDA sends you a check once you do. You
I got a
can
couple-
decide to do a custom project, in which case you'll have to fill out a grant application. And the custom projects are more of that, giving the money back to the residents and designing that kind of program.
How does this affect the new building and the cost to build for, say, a homeowner bought a lot and wants to build? I mean, are these requirements that will go into effect for that person, or what? Or
So most of the actions are only going to impact the municipality, so like switching out your streetlights to LEDs, that's only going to impact the municipality in terms of the cost. And I
I
guess
think we're already doing that, by the way.
But if you're thinking about the stretch code, so the stretch code would impact new building construction costs. It would make it a little bit more expensive to build, but it would pay back pretty quickly and there would be savings over time. So that's the one specific action that might affect new construction.
So I'm kind of a numbers guy there. What are we talking? A year, 2 years, 3 years, 20 years?
So I think NYSERDA's estimates for the New York stretch code is that the first cost of construction increases by about $1,500 to $2,500, and the payback is somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 to 7 years. So it's not an immediate payback, but if you're thinking of buildings that are going to be around for 50, 60 years, it's not too bad.
No, it's not too bad. But the only question after that would be, these upgrades are fine, but what about older buildings that people own? I mean,
Yeah.
they're hard to renovate. In some cases, not insulated well. I mean, people don't have the money to put forth on the front end of that.
Yeah, so this program doesn't target at this time new existing buildings. It doesn't have anything to target existing buildings. So
I think that would be the
action in the
focus of
future,
it.
but
I would
Say
think
again?
that would be the focus of it, because that's part of the focus of the initial question I had with the town building.
yeah, I
We've
think
got some old buildings around town that frankly aren't insulated well and are hard to retrofit with heat pumps and that sort.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head why it isn't targeting those existing buildings. It's because it does require so much money for residents to do it. So, it's encouraging residents to think about it. The Community Campaigns Action is working with groups like Heat Smart to encourage residents to look at their options. But in terms of requirements, the only one that impacts, building construction would be the stretch code. And it targets new construction just because those are the buildings that are already being built. It's not trying to place an undue burden on existing homeowners.
Well, I'm kind of in the building trade, and I am in the building trade. I'm not kind of. Right now, we've got pretty extensive insulation laws with the state, things of that nature, which are tremendously making the buildings more efficient.
Yeah.
Better air quality, better air turnover and quality, things of that nature. And how much further are we going? I mean, people still use, especially in rural parts of the town, or rural parts of every town, are still using propane. And then unfortunately, that's all we can use now at this point in Lansing. So, how does,
Yeah, so the stretch code is about a 10% improvement over the current existing energy code. And so we have a technical expert from Tatum Engineering, Lou Vogel, that we often bring to communities, and he gives a whole presentation specifically on the stretch code. So if that's of interest to the board, we'd be happy to bring in Lou Vogel so he could answer all the technical questions and provide that information directly to you. Or he can also have an individual meeting, say with you, Doug, and the code enforcement officer.
No, I mean, that would be helpful. And,
Yeah.
We just built a building downtown in the last couple of years with all heat pumps in it. And I've heard, good things and bad things about heat pumps, certainly with efficiencies and stuff like that with regard to hyper splits and things of that nature, which is a more efficient use. You can draw heat from air down to absolute zero, technically. Yeah. But we're still the costs are prohibitive to that. And like I said before, it's hard to retrofit that or build in new. I mean, that once again is a kind of a taller order. So,
Yeah.
but those are, I'm done. That's what I've got. So thanks for the information on Lou.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and we can organize that if there's interest.
Well, I actually, we've hit the building we built, Tatum actually engineered, so I
Yeah.
tried to get a hold of them. So anyway, that's all I had.
Okay, I got Brown and I got Joe. Okay.
So my understanding from what you're saying is that this is specifically to encourage the municipality to do these things rather than the municipality encouraging residents to. Is that more or less on the right page?
Yeah, for the most part, most of the actions are geared towards the municipality taking action. There are a couple of actions, namely the community campaigns one, where it is
Right.
a municipality encouraging residents to take action. But for the most part, it's just municipalities working on it.
Okay.
specifically.
And if we were to meet some of these goals and get the points, could we then use that money to fund what we have already done? Like if we were to buy some electric vehicles and then get the however many $1,000s, could we then put that money towards the purchase that we already did, or would that be for additional purchases?
It's typically looking for additionality.
Okay. Other than sort of technical questions where I just want to see what's the point breakdown and that sort of thing. Those are my questions, and I'm sure I can get those from you.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a website, southerntiercec.org. There's also a NYSERDA program page. I can put both those links in the chat for people to take a look at.
Perfect. Thanks.
Okay, Joe?
Yeah, I think I heard you say that we're going to have to go to the stretch code at some point in the near future anyway.
So the presumption right now is that the stretch code is typically what we're going to see in the energy code in a couple of years' time. So every 3 years or so, the energy code seems to creep up a little bit. The current thinking, from my understanding from the state and from Lou, is that what the stretch code is right now is likely to be largely adopted for the next energy code that'll come in, I think, 23 or not 23, it'll probably be 2024, 2025.
So really just adopting the stretch code at this point would be, going ahead a few years in terms of code changes. But it would also mean that the group of buildings that are built in the next 2-3 years will be up to the code requirements that are going to be coming forward. So we won't have these buildings that are kind of behind scale that we have to retrofit to bring up. But we're kind of moving towards that higher goal sooner, and our building stock will be better over the long term.
Yeah, that's how NYSERDA is billing it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So Terry, it would improving existing buildings, like putting in newer windows, would that be under one of those criteria?
Yeah, so that could possibly meet the clean energy upgrades action. So we've seen municipalities accomplish that action by switching their interior lights to LEDs, improving insulation and air sealing either through windows or through air sealing, by changing out their heating system. So there's a bunch of different ways it can be done. We would just have to see if it would meet the 10% requirement in terms of savings.
So changing over our lights, which we're already moving towards to LEDs, does that get us any points?
Yeah, that could probably, for a lot of communities, that's enough to get to the 10% improvement. That's what I've seen.
We have to complete it first?
Yes, you do have to complete it first, yeah.
So I don't know where we are in that process myself. CJ, do you know anything if we are close to upgrading all the LED lights? I think we did this last year, did we not?
Yeah, so the town did authorize that action, and I believe I just received correspondence from Charmaine about the charges for the, what was it, the purchase of life cycle, I want to say, purchase of life remaining. So I believe those have been billed to the respective lighting districts now. So yeah, I think it's on its way or nearly done.
So we'll have notification, I guess the installation is not quite complete yet, but once we have that done, then we can put that down to check that box to hopefully qualify for the, what, $5,000?
So that, if it's talking about the streetlights, that'll get you another 700 points, so that'll put you at about 1,000 points. So you're still a little shy of the 3,000 point threshold, but you're getting closer.
And how long do we have to do this? I know that it's competitive, but what is the window to get these things done?
So right now, it looks like the program funding is out at least until 2025, I want to say. So we're hoping to get all these grants out the door by 25. So I think we got a bit of time.
All right, Joe, then Brown. Okay, go ahead, Joe.
When do these when can we have done some of these things? Because it sounds like some of these things are in process. So is there a beginning date that you start at? So let's say we replaced all the lights, our building lights last year. Does that count, or does that not count? So, when's the time period for these things?
So for building upgrades, it would have to be done after January 1st, 2020. So if they were done last year, that would fit. For putting in a charging station, it would have to have been done this year. But that's typically, those are kind of the deadlines.
Okay, and you're talking completed projects, not necessarily completed bidding, and the project is, in queue, we've got the money set, but it has to be finalized?
Yes, it has to have been installed and operational.
Okay, thank you.
Rowan?
I don't recall.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions? If not, okay, Joe, one more.
What's a community campaign entail? I mean, how much work is that? It's a lot of points, and I'm not sure what qualifies as a community campaign.
Yeah, so we see a couple of these already getting started in Tompkins County. There's 4 different kinds. There's a community solar campaign, electric vehicle demand response, and then clean heating and cooling. And essentially what it is the municipality is either on its own or working with a partner to encourage residents to take part in one of these things. So it might be encouraging residents to check out, the community solar options that they have and to sign up for community solar. Or in the case of clean heating and cooling, which is probably more pertinent to the town of Lansing, it'd be encouraging them to, check out, what they can do to their homes in terms of energy efficiency or, putting in heat pumps. So what we're seeing right now is a lot of communities working with Heat Smart Tompkins, a group that I think you all know, and working with that campaign to see if they can better inform residents. So it's probably very similar to actions that the town might have done in the past. Hosting a webinar or, hosting a meeting at the town hall, COVID permitting, putting up signs, sending out information in the newsletter, putting it on the website. And then if 10 people sign up and do the action, you get credit for it. And $5,000 if that's still available.
Okay, so it's based on people seeing something from the town and signing up, or just Heat Smart says we got 10 people who signed up during the time period this campaign was happening? How does that?
Yeah, that's a little bit of a technicality. So basically what you do, the mechanism is you submit a scoping document to NYSERDA saying, these are the activities we're gonna do during our campaign. And NYSERDA says, okay, you're good to go. And as soon as you get that approval that you're good to go, you start the campaign. Any installation that occurs from that point forward can count, whether it's a direct result of a town action or whether, they never heard of the town promoting it, they just went and did it on their own. You still get to claim credit for it.
Okay. Any other questions? One comment I would have is that as we become enthusiastic, let's please remember that our planner is already buried with other projects. If you want to take the lead on something, please CC her and the rest of us and go as far as you can on your own. And then if we need help from Terry or from CJ, that is the last option, not the first option, because like I said before, we're a little bit short of help right now. And we have some changeovers going on, as you all know, between looking at another planner and also the code officer. And some of the stuff actually, in the past, Terry has been very educational, walks you through it. If I can understand it, anybody can understand it. So it's all good. So I much appreciate it, Terry. And like I said, some of these things we actually might have just a little bit of effort. We might be able to gather some of these points in a hurry, especially if we're already looking at a charging station, amongst other things. So this is a little bit of research that maybe whoever's interested in these things can work with Terry and, you know, just include the rest of us in the conversation, but if anyone wants to take the lead, you have my blessing, okay? All right, thank you, Terry. Always
Yeah,
good to
thank
see you.
so much. Have a great rest of your night.
You too. Okay, thank you. Good
And by the way,
conversation.
if I may, the Conservation Advisory Council is the designated task force for the Climate Smart Communities program, and they're up to speak next. So I think that they're talking about this for their work plan and trying to debate what they can take on. So, and I'll admit them if you'd like.
Nice segue, thank you. Really can't see you, boss. Hello, Carrie.
Hi,
Hi.
thanks for having me. Glad this is working.
Yeah, so we have 15 minutes approximately, so we'll turn it over to you and Tom and have at it.
Great. Well, thanks for having us. I'm Carrie Kaplinka-Lair. I co-chair the Conservation Advisory Council that Lansing set up, and Tom Butler is on also, and Tom's the other co-chair. I'm going to start by sharing my screen and see how this works. Can people see that okay? That's acceptable?
Yep.
Great. Well, just as a reminder, we were set up about 2 years ago by the town board, and the Lansing Conservation Advisory Council has a mission that we are to advise in the management and the protection of our town's natural resources. And I wanted to just mention the members of the CAC besides Tom Butler, who I think you all know is our liaison to the planning board, and I'm also an ecologist. And myself, I'm a writer, and I specialize in the interface between agriculture and the environment. We have Robin Bailey, who is a bird specialist, Andrew Benson, who wears 101 hats that you all know, Karen Edelstein, who's a mapping specialist, John Fleming, who's a local farmer with Walnut Acres and also serves on Lansing Agriculture Committee. John Greenlee is a physicist who lives in Ludlowville and an amateur photographer. Todd Walter lives on Buck Road, and he's an eco-hydroecologist. And Dave Wolf, who is a soils expert. And I mention their backgrounds because all these backgrounds have come into play as we have worked on documents that are needed. And I also wanted to give a nod to CJ and Cornell Cooperative Extension, because CJ and also people like Terry have been immensely helpful to us as we have worked on the documents that we need to work on. So here's a little bit of our work plan. And as I mentioned, it's based on Lansing Town Board's Resolution 1949, which put the CAC into existence. Also, the town's comprehensive plan. New York State law outlines what Conservation Advisory Councils should do. And then Tompkins County has provided some guidance and background documents. So our charge has been to inventory and map open areas within the town and include wetlands in that inventory. And we do this to move toward an open space inventory, which would prioritize open areas in Lansing. And that would be for conservation based on their natural features, their scenic features, and their cultural values. We have two core documents that are just about complete. And the one that we are here mostly to focus on today is the Natural Resources Inventory. But I will also talk about our Scenic Resources Inventory, which will be an appendix that's listed as the fourth bullet. The Natural Resources Inventory describes and also maps our open space. So that includes ag lands, forested lands, scenic resources, But we also have detail in there on soils and geologic and water features. And we talk about the effect of climate change on Lansing's natural resources, which is pretty profound, actually. So let me go into just a small amount of detail on this. I promise to be short. Here's an example of one of the maps in the NRI. It's land use cover. And you can see for each map, we have a key and we have a fair amount of description. There's a large text area. And all of the board members have received a URL for the natural resources inventory so that you can look at it in detail. And I think that was provided by CJ about a month and a half ago to you. Here's an example of wetlands in Lansing. As you can see, there are quite a few of these important natural resources. Just before I get to the scenic resources appendix, I wanted to mention that the natural resources inventory is going to be at these two parts. It'll be the NRI plus the scenic resources appendix, but the NRI stands on its own. And our hope is that the board will adopt this and then it will become a document that's core to what the future looks like for Lansing. For the scenic resources appendix, you can probably, many of you know this beautiful view taken very close to where the Benson's place is on Lansingville Road. It's essentially a document that is a description of distinctive views in Lansing. And this is a particularly beautiful one. We began by inventorying 66 sites in Lansing, and you can probably see those little black barbell looking lines here. There's 66 of those. And then we also added some sites and we worked to prioritize them. There are 24 that we listed as distinctive features that are worthy of special protections. And then we created view sheds for each distinctive site. So here's one example going back to that view from the Bensons, looking south. If you were standing at the green dot in the map on the right, that would be close to where the Bensons is, and the blue shaded area is what you would see. It's also what people in those areas would see if they look at the green dot. So it's kind of a two-way street. And for each of the views, we've created a map like this, a view shed, to give people a sense of the scope. Sometimes the view shed is actually quite small and intimate because the area is a small area, and sometimes it's quite extensive like this. You can see quite easily that preserving Lansing's scenic views benefits the region, and people in Ithaca and Trumansburg look over at us. So it's a community-wide benefit. We have a lot of future work to do. And at the top is the adoption of the natural resources inventory, as I mentioned. And then after that, the scenic resources appendix, which is in the final stages. We also want to work toward becoming a conservation board, and there are a number of steps that will be involved in that process. We hope to contribute to overlay districts for streams, slopes, wetlands, and scenic byways. And then it's part of our charge to do a fair amount of community outreach. We haven't been able to do as much of that yet. First of all, because we've been working on our core documents, but also because of the pandemic. So that is in the near future. And then, of course, ongoing communication with local organizations, committees, and you, the town board. So far, we have met extensively with Cooperative Extension, Lansing's Advisory Committee on the Power Plant Future, Finger Lakes Land Trust, and other nonprofits. And we will continue to do that so that there is cross-fertilization. So that is pretty much the end of what I have to share for slides. And I thought I would open it up and allow questions, and also the possibility for Tom to chime in as co-chair. So questions for either of us?
I have a question. What's the difference between you want to eventually become a conservation board? What is the difference between a conservation advisory council, is it, and a conservation board?
Yes, so conservation board, and I'll also let CJ weigh in here because she knows a lot about it, and Tom too. But from what I understand, a conservation board has a little bit more skin in the game. They have accomplished the tasks of completing all of the baseline documentation, and then they are able to view what comes to the planning board. And as long as they don't hold up the process, they would be considered a welcome addition with their knowledge of conservation. I don't know if you want to refine that description, Tom.
No, I think that pretty well sums it up. But I think CJ should say a little something about it.
Yeah, I would just say that it does involve the conservation, which would be a conservation board, more formally in environmental review. I just want to note that the town planning board currently has made it their policy to refer any type 1 actions under seeker. So those that are anticipated to have significant impacts, they've already actually referred those to Conservation Advisory Council to hopefully get comments from them and to establish that relationship more. So we just haven't had any type 1 actions to refer to them yet. So
Wouldn't it be something you widen the scope of work with Conservation Advisory Council? And keep it the way it is, it just give you a little more, want to say a little more definition in your mission statement? Wouldn't that be the same thing?
I think our mission will remain fairly much the same.
Yeah.
Any other questions from the board?
Yeah, I got one. Maybe a comment question more than anything. What will this do to property rights of people that own this land? I know some of it is in certain areas, but I mean, will that interfere with any plans they may have, or somebody else that buys the land if that's for sale or something?
No, not currently. I mean, for example, what will be listed in the scenic resources section will almost be a notation as to what is considered valuable to the town of Lansing aesthetically and possibly in regard to natural resources, but there will be no formal restrictions on the land, no abridgment of any rights. Down the road, there could be the possibility in the future, if Lansing would like to, for Lansing to hold easements on properties where the landowner requests that, but we're not quite at that stage yet.
Well, I have no problem with the landowner requesting it. That doesn't bother me. It's just if we're trying to step on some, well, not step on it, but limit what people can do with their land. I know we do anyway, for good reasons. But I just didn't know if it went any further than that.
No, I mean, we don't have that authority.
Okay.
I could speak to that just a bit more, Doug, which was part of the open space inventory and index is to identify lands that could be priority areas for acquisition or conservation easements. And it could be by the town, it could be by others. It could be by the landowners offering it, but it just kind of calls out these areas that could be a priority. For instance, I think one of the most notable ones in the town is Bell Station, for instance. That's kind of a very notable open area. It shows up in the state's plan. It shows up in the town's comprehensive plan. So it's kind of an example of something like that. And maybe there'll be more, maybe they won't. So it really depends on the work CAC is doing.
Okay, thank you.
Any Any other questions? Bronwyn?
Start with a comment. Thank you so much for all of the work the whole committee's put into this. I'm really looking forward to delving into it. And I feel like this gives us such a good base of information to start with to be able to make educated decisions and move forward. So thank you a ton for that. And I noticed that communication is in your goals, and relating to the presentation we just heard, do you have, sorry, when, I guess, thinking about the clean energy communities leadership round, what do you have advice for us yet about what to pursue, about what is kind of the easy gets that are in that, or is that something that you're going to look at and send us information about? Kind of where does that stand?
Yeah, that's a great question. We worked fairly extensively with Osama Suda, who was on staff with Cooperative Extension, and now we're still working with Terry, although we're hoping to shut a little bit of that work off so we can focus on other things that the CAC needs to do. But one of the things we did was to look at, what we kind of called low-hanging fruit that Lansing could do without a ton of money and time, because there are a lot of things on the list. And it was great when I think Terry explained this when we went through the list. Lansing's already done a lot of things, which is quite encouraging. But there are certain things that Lansing's been planning on anyway, like these charging stations, and we can get credit for that. So there's, as far as I can remember, there is a short list of things that we have kind of queued up and waiting to act on. And it's a question of, okay, who can actually get the work done?
Right.
So, feel free, CJ and Tom, to jump in here, because you've both been, kind of at the forefront there.
I think that we would rely heavily on Terry and his program to move this clean energy communities thing forward. They helped us a lot with the, what was it called? The smart energy community thing. They were very helpful. I mean, we did a bunch of the work, but they did a bunch of the work too. So we would really have to depend on them quite a bit, because as already been noted, we're pretty busy with what we're doing with the CAC. In regards to that scenic resources inventory, that Carrie had mentioned, there's about 24 prime sites. We actually have over 60, but we're still winnowing through some of those. I wouldn't consider them necessarily prime sites, but there's still something worth considering as something worth looking at.
Okay. Any other questions? No? Thank you both very much.
Thanks for your time.
Good work.
All right.
Take care. I'm getting hungry, Joe. What are you eating? Whatever it is, looks good. Okay. I guess we'll go now on to privilege of the floor. CJ, do we have anybody in the waiting room?
Yes, I believe Carrie also did want to come back and speak to privilege of the floor. So hold just a moment.
Okay. Take a break. Whatever it is, that's good. Okay. I guess we're going on
Here's back.
Oh, you're back.
Hi, you can't get rid of me. I'm coming wearing a different hat. So I should put a different hat on.
I can only give you up to 3. Okay, so go ahead.
3 minutes. Okay, great. So coming as a resident And I think you know my name, Carrie Kaplinka-Lair. And I just wanted to, well, first of all, thank you for your service to the town. It seemed like a good time to fit that comment in. And I wanted to address process in regard to the recent event of the proposal to abandon Ross Road. I know it is no longer on your consent agenda, but I thought better to be proactive than to be reactive. So I live at 118 Ross Road, and our property borders part of the paved portion of Ross Road and the seasonal portion of Ross Road. And I've used the seasonal portion of Ross Road probably an average of 5 times a week for the past 10 years. In that time period, I've witnessed no fewer than 2 extensive renovations of the road, including ditching the sides and laying down new surfacing material each of those times with town equipment. This is a highway. It's a seasonal use highway. There's a sign on it. And so my hope is that should the town and the highway department decide to abandon any road in Lansing anywhere, that adjoining property owners would be notified ahead of time, kind of in the spirit of transparency. And I think that that would really build trust between the town board and the highway department and Lansing residents for a closure of any road anywhere. In the future, I would also really hope that the town attorney would advise adjoining landowners about implications of an abandoned road. What happens to the land? Does it revert? And then what are landowners' obligations about posting and trespass? That would be really helpful information for people to know ahead of time. And I guess in closing, just perhaps most importantly, I would think that the highway department would want to base decisions on data, such as number of cars and pedestrians that are using a given road. And this should be fairly possible with like a pneumatic road tube counter or other technology. So I really enjoy being part of this town, and I want to be a part of a town that makes their processes known to residents ahead of time and bases their decision on facts. So I thank you so much for this opportunity and appreciate the chance to speak.
Okay.
Thank
Great,
you. All right. Take care.
CJ, do we have anybody else waiting in the wings?
I don't believe so. I don't see anybody. I do
Okay,
have a Michael. I'm not sure. Perhaps you'd want to speak. So hold on just a moment.
Mike,
I have Michael Kaplinka there as well, but I don't know if that maybe was just Carrie's maybe another account, or not sure. So
You can ask her.
so Carrie, does your husband Michael want to make a comment? Or maybe? No? Yes? Then she's on mute.
Yeah, but she can hear you.
It looks like she can hear.
Yeah, does anyone else want to make a comment? Okay, I guess we'll move on, CJ. No one else, CJ? You're on mute.
I have Chuck Bartosh here, but I believe he was intending to speak about agenda item 16, but if you'd prefer, he just speak now, it's up to you.
No, I think we can wait till item 16. That's okay, because it'd be more of a, no pun intended, of a clarity issue. More than anything else.
Okay, that's it then. Those are the only people in the waiting room.
So moving on to item 7 in your packet. Seeing my fingers work. We have the Lansing Community Library Report. Under your liaison, is there anything else you want to add to the report that was given to us?
No, just that I guess things are progressing well and as the library opens up more and more, and we're quite happy with the different programs that have been presented. That's about it.
Well, I do give them credit. They worked very hard to keep it open.
Yeah.
Very hard, under adverse conditions, so good for them.
And there is a vote on the 26th on the budget and the new trustees.
Okay, thank you.
May I ask a question about that vote? I know about, can you actually go to the library
Yes, you
to
can.
do the vote? Okay, I just wondered about that.
Or you can pick up an absentee ballot.
Okay.
And what, do you know what time it's open to vote?
I think it says here, I think like I read it. Let's see. From 10 a.m. until 8 p.m. on the 27th.
Okay, good. Okay, moving on to item 8, Lansing Youth Service Report. We have that in our packet also. Item 9, we actually have Mike Sigler here. And we're going to get the first version of his report, hot off the press. No one has heard of this yet, so it'll be live.
I know,
Very exciting time, Michael. Go ahead.
because I was very busy this week.
You are busy.
So Ed, I'm getting a lot of complaints about the snow. So if there's something you can do, that would be great.
Hey,
Appreciate it.
Mike, you got to speak right up into the microphone or nobody's going to hear you except Ed and Andrew. And
I was just
Debbie.
talking about Ed's not very responsive about the snow. So
I keep giving messages. That's all I can do.
that would be great. Thank you. Big news. Thank you again for having me in. I'm glad to see things are getting a little bit back to normal now. My kid went back to school this week for the first full week, so that was exciting.
hey, Mike, there's an echo in the room. If you aren't talking directly into the mic, like almost touching it, it's going to be really hard for anybody outside that room to hear you.
Probably,
All right,
it's probably echoing off the plexiglass.
there.
You
I
can,
would
Is that
have to
better?
eat.
or you can, Mike, you can sit here and I'll move over and you can just.
No, this tastes delicious. This is the tasting microphone I've ever had.
I think it's blueberry.
So, thanks again for having me in. I really appreciate it. And you actually can hear that better. There isn't a lot of echo, but it's better. Big news from last night. I don't know. I'm assuming you all have probably heard this, that Tompkins County Administrator Jason Molina, he has announced that he'll be stepping down from his role at the end of May 2021. So just about a month, almost 6 weeks away. He informed the legislature last night that he was accepting a role as the executive director of the Livingston County, New York Water and Sewer Authority. He did say, I'm just going to quote him, it's easier to do that. This has been an extremely difficult decision, but it is the right one for me and my family. This new position will afford me a better balance in my life and opportunities to be closer to our families, Melinda, Sharon, and largest staff. Just some stuff that he's done. I mean, he's gotten a lot done in his 3 years. Melinda, he was hired as Tompkins County Administrator back in January of 2018. In his tenure, he has overseen the establishment of the county's Office of Veteran Services, hiring its first director. He established the county's first Chief Equity and Diversity Officer, and he did review the recommendation of the merger of mental health and public health departments now under Frank Krupa. In March of 2020, he declared a state of emergency in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, and he's led Tompkins County through that crisis, and I give him a lot of credit for that. Our county is certainly fared, I think, better than a lot of other counties, and that was in due large part to his efforts, Frank Krupa's efforts, and the team that he was able to put together. Just talking about COVID, this is a good example. You know, we are the second most vaccinated county in the state at over 50%. We have not reached the point yet even where we are just sitting on vaccine. You know, we don't have the hesitancy problem yet. We do expect to hit that soon. We talked about that last night, but we haven't hit it yet, and that's fantastic. We've done over 1 million COVID-19 tests in the county. Everyone over 16 in the country now is eligible to get the vaccine, and you know we're working towards that. If you go to vaccination at the mall, you'll see a lot of younger people there. That seems to be where they're going to get vaccinated. So we're starting to see that younger population kind of come in. We are now working at the county level to return to in-person meetings. We don't know yet what we're going to require yet of county workers disclosing their vaccination status or not. Obviously, that's something you're dealing with too. Definitely a fraught issue with HIPAA and other things about how do we let people come back in, how do you know whether vaccinated and non-vaccinated. So obviously concerned for the county as well as you. Case numbers are down in Tompkins, things are moving in the right direction. And we're starting to do a much better job even of, we've done well with marginalized groups. We're getting a lot of notice from farmers about getting farm workers vaccinated. We're doing some pop-ups now. We're getting out more into the rural areas. So that is happening. And I just want to let you know that hasn't been on our radar for quite some time. It's not like that was forgotten. It was just a matter of, getting the most people vaccinated as possible. This will be interesting to you because it's in your work session later. We voted to support county funding for a new bridge in Freeville. Normally, county bridges are funded like 80% county, 20% local share, town share. But this new bridge came out of a new pot of money, Bridge New York. It was money that Dryden tapped into, saved the county a bundle of money, basically. Because now Bridge New York was paying 95%, and then the county, well, the local share would have been 5%, the town share. The county said, we're going to pay for the whole thing on that road in Dryden. We did not put the Freesboro Bridge under that, even though the Freesboro Bridge is probably going to get the same funding. Excuse me. We did not include them for any particular reason. We're setting up the policy. We want this to be a standardized policy for everybody, so that when Lansing, when you work, you're putting in for Doug Road, that way when you guys come and say, hey, county, this is the policy for you to pay for it, we go, yes, actually, that is the policy. So that's what we're working on. I think that's going to go through. I don't see any big hesitancy to the county, considering the Bridge New York money, we're saving so much. I mean, the bridge over there in Freeville was $1.2 million, I think. Great, we only had to pay $200,000. So it's good for the county, it's good for the towns. So that's what we're working on. Q Medical Center urgent care on this side of the lake is still closed. I have followed up with Marty Stallone to see what the plan is going forward. So I'll keep you in the loop. I just didn't want you to think I forgot about it. He had said there would be a plan for this side of the lake and to kind of bring him back in a few months. It's been a few months, so I'll be touching base with him this week. I already sent out a voicemail to him. So the county is working on making the Finger Lakes designated a National Heritage Site. You may have heard something about this. There was a comment period that you can comment. Check my Facebook page on that, and you can go and make comments on what you think of this. We'll also be talking about this at the Housing and Economic Development tomorrow. Martha Robertson's bringing this forward, and hopefully they'll bring in some federal money. It also brings up some interesting questions, right? I mean, your National Heritage Site, what kind of development are you going to have? Utilities, solar, these kind of things. Things that aren't allowed in the, for example, the Adirondacks and Catskills. Will they be allowed? They'll be allowed, but, should they be welcomed? I guess in the National Heritage Site would be the question. It's just, an interesting confluence of what seem to be maybe competing virtues. On the solar front, the Homer 90 megawatt array, they held a town forum. They actually held 2 this past week. It's really last week. And I zoomed in and I asked questions. I don't mean I zoomed in physically, I zoomed in and was able to ask questions. And it was interesting. Just some of the things they're talking about over there at Homer, how it's marginal land, it's not prime farmland. The buffers they're kind of put up for people, the vegetative screening and things like that. And they're not going to be contiguous. They're actually building their array kind of in split sections. I thought was interesting. And that all came out of the meeting. The numbers still don't make sense to me, but they make sense to them. They did say they were going to pay on the 90 megawatts. That's the nameplate generating capacity, kind of like the power plant down there was 310, I think, right? Same idea here. Its nameplate is 90 megawatts, but they're not going to generate 90. They're only going to generate probably 18. So are you going to pay on the 18 megawatts or are you going to pay on the 90? They said they were gonna pay on the 9th, so that'll be something that's hammered out in the pilot, but that I thought was kind of interesting. So that's about it. That was a lot. Next round of NYSERDA grants, I think is expected to be awarded this spring, so right around now. So we'll have some new information that comes available. And I know CJ's keeping me up to date on all this stuff, so that's cool. And that's about it. That's all that's going on in the county. Budgeting starts soon, actually. So that'll start next month.
Does anyone have any questions for Mike? No. So this 90 megawatts,
Yes.
about the pilot, did they talk about host community agreement?
They were talking a little bit about that. Now, we'll do lots of questions about that. So that's something they're talking more to people like you about, I think, like the,
That's the hidden jewel.
well, it is, I mean, but what is the state gonna do? That's the big question. Well, where, that was the other concern that people had, was that the state has an awful lot of control over what's gonna happen, but.
Not 100%.
Well, they're relying on you guys too, don't worry.
Well, we've given our comments, we've given it to the Office of Renewable Energy, and we'll go from there. CJ, I'm going to refer this back to you. I think they also were specific about the host community agreement, were they not?
Sorry, I just got a candy. Okay, so yes, one of the
For some reason, I don't know.
one of the two new definitions differing from the draft version of the Office of Renewable Energy Siting Regulations to the final. They added two things. One of them was geographic extent, and the other was a definition of host community benefits. So I'm guessing what we're going to see is something coming out of Public Service Commission explaining these, helping define those host community benefits very, I'd say more specifically. And also Mike circulated some great information on the new farmland working group. And I'm guessing, Ag and Markets finally kind of probably had it with being excluded from the process, and they'll be, it seems, brought back into that. So we'll see where it goes. But, yeah.
What are your comments, Mike, about Tompkins County being the second highest as far as counties go, right? Vaccinations. The first one is by percent. It's much smaller than we are.
Yeah.
On that, so it's remarkable that also the fact that anywhere from 35 to 50,000 people migrate in and out of this county at one time, and they still have done such a remarkable job to keep the infection rate down. As you know, we meet every Thursday morning at 8:30 via phone for Jason Lino and Frank Krupa and Amy, and ever since this pandemic started, and I've shared everything to all the board members when Dominic does the summary, usually quite quickly that same day. Jason and his team have been remarkable. I mean, they're informed, they're calm, they're thorough, they're patient. It's been a remarkable, presentations every month, or I should say every week. We keep asking questions, and these things, as you know, it's a constantly, as we say, subject to change. Sometimes these changes are daily when we first started, right? We had 3 executive orders in 4 days how to do our procedures here. Some of these were done at 1:15 in the morning. We were scrambling the next morning to get a meeting together to change what we just changed before. So having said all that, he's going to be missed.
He definitely will be, but I also want people to understand, he's built such a good team there, I think, at the administration, that there's never a good time to leave, obviously. But he has put people in place where we will continue on and people will still be safe. It's not that kind of situation. So, but that's in large part due to what he's done. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I have nothing else, my friend. It's you can go home while it's still light out. It's a good meeting.
Hey, fantastic! Out in the snow, man. This is great. So, all right, thank you very much.
Bye bye. Item 10 in your packet is Park and Rec report by the world famous Pat Terrell.
Where are we?
I'm so sorry you guys can't be here. This is a lot of fun at this end. Someday soon we'll all be together.
I was told to keep it short, so unless anyone has any questions, we're good to move on.
Good. I sent everybody some information about having a motion to hire somebody as an appraiser. And has everyone had a chance to look at it?
Say that again.
The information I sent that for us to look at for an appraiser for the right.
Yes, hello.
Now, do you want to do this now, or do you want to do it? And Mrs. Munson says no.
Well, if they're in agreement, it could just go in as an additional item in the consent agenda, and it could just be voted with everything else, unless there's some reason not to do that.
Okay, would everybody want to put that in the consent agenda?
Well, I just have a quick question because it looked to me like the two documents, one of which said we were paying a flat fee and the other said we were paying a percentage of sale. And so I was not sure what that conflict was about or whether we're paying both a flat fee and a percentage.
Guy, you want to chime in while I dig through my papers?
Yes, one is a consulting agreement to provide business and real property analysis relative to income, et cetera, to determine what is an appropriate price, what are the hiccups, risks, options, et cetera. That's more like a professional financial and business consulting agreement. It's being done as a flat rate. I think he's probably underestimated the amount of time given the size of this land and the number of issues, but that's okay. It's still proposed as a flat rate. And the other would be what would happen once you actually put in an offer and it's accepted, going through the due diligence, contingency, closing review, negotiation processes, just like you would if you were to buy or sell a home, i.e. acting as a realtor. In commercial transactions, the realty agreements tend to be built slightly differently, but this one's very simple. Basically, you don't owe a dime unless you actually close based on that deal. And it's a window of time agreement. It's a listing only for a certain amount of time.
Do we have to do both or can we do one or the other?
You can do one or both or neither.
Okay, so they are contingent on doing both of them. Okay, thank you.
Not that I'm aware. I mean, I think they're separate agreements because they are discretely separate tasks, at least as I see it, but others can see it how they wish.
Well, it sounds like one is predicated on the sale of the property. One is not. One looks like it's an appraisal for the fee of $2,500, however they divvy it up. And the other one is a 5% upon the sale of the property. So let's say if they get the appraisal done, the town is on the hook for $2,500. If we don't buy the property, I don't think there's any more allocation of money.
No.
If we make an offer.
Even if we make an offer.
Right. One is a consulting agreement to gather the information and assist Patrick with doing the analysis so we can understand what are the fiscal and other implications of making an offer, as well as to develop what is the appropriate number to offer under all the attendant circumstances. And part of that is to determine whether or not you should go with an actual appraisal or whether there is enough information from existing sales, et cetera. It's also an income analysis. The town is probably not going to run a boat repair shop. I would be highly skeptical of the town operating gasoline stations and doing gasoline sales, but you could, the facilities are there. But it's to assess what those issues are and do a lot of data mining and digging. So one is a consulting agreement and one is an agency agreement. It's sort of like when you buy a house, you hire an inspector to examine the house and give you a report on everything you might be getting into and what it might be. And then you have a realtor that actually sort of brokers the sale. Same sort of distinction, except it's on a much grander scale.
Is there any chance of this property being sold during this appraisal process?
Yeah. Yeah, if another buyer comes along and he locks it up, then you pretty much pull the plug on wherever you are in the deal.
Okay.
And Ed, what are you wanting us to vote on or to put as part of consent agenda? Were you thinking both or just one of these?
Well, Okay, if you do one, then you're gonna have to come back and do a second one if you want to put a bid on.
Right.
But also whatever that the comfort zone, I don't think it's a deal breaker if you do one without the other, but on the other hand, just keep in mind that you're gonna probably have to do the second one to move forward. But it sounds like. it's a
Okay, so
package.
you,
You know, what I'm looking
so
at.
you're proposing that we vote on both? Mhm.
And we don't
Okay.
have to, quite frankly, that amount, that 5%, I think we would be very careful to choose.
Ed, can you speak into the mic, please?
Sure. Or both. So anyways, I think we'd be very careful about the second part. In other words, really consider before we put an offer on, knowing that, right, if it goes through, we're on the hook for 5%.
What's the process of us making a offer? You know, how does that technically work? Is that something that the realtor comes back to the board? You know, what, are we gonna have a special meeting? You know, how would that work out in a practical sense?
Well, I think we probably have to go into a private session to talk about that. First of all, see what our comfort zone is, right? What the range is, and to go from there, as we've done with other agreements, up to a certain amount, and negotiate. And I think that would probably be done in a private session. From there, once again, we'll get the data, and at that point, we'll be able to dive more into the numbers. There's certain things I'm looking at there that when it says other income, I don't know what that is, you know, things of that nature. But on the other hand, when you get an appraisal, at least you're looking for what value is. Not what the assessment is, what the value is. And of course, every potential buyer has to look at what the value is for them. Because they may be looking at it for a different use or an enhanced use that would be unique to them.
I might just add that you're pretty far away, not necessarily in terms of time, but in terms of motion, from making an offer, because you don't really even have preliminary numbers. And the limitation of an appraisal, not that you couldn't try to custom define the appraisal process, but the limitation of a land appraisal, appraisals usually base the value of the land on, quote, highest and best use, end quote. The town's use of a marina and the income a town may generate from slips, storage, and a certain amount of services or franchises is categorically different than the commercial use of a marina. The value to the town is lakefront recreation, expanded parkland, expanded, facilities for both, land using members who want a park or for people that want to enjoy the lake. I'm not sure that parkland in that sense quantifies well in terms of a dollar value. So what this type of consulting might give you, and it's really no different than the type of consulting we got when we looked at the marina improvement projects or the highway barn projects. It's that same type of fiscal analysis. It's so that you can actually compare, apples to oranges as opposed to apples to suspension bridges. There are things that an appraisal is not going to give you because the town's intended use is actually almost antithetical to commercial use. So there's a fair amount of work that has to be done. And again, if you are committed to investigating this opportunity, then one contract is a near certainty. And if you're interested in making an offer, then the other contract is a possible certainty. I mean, you can try to go it without a negotiator or someone who knows the prices and all this stuff. But I don't know how many of you have bought or sold a house without a realtor. That's sort of the question that's at hand. It's up to you.
Certainly bought a house without a realtor. I've not bought a marina without a realtor. And that's a big difference.
Right. That's there. And again, there's also a big difference between a commercial realtor and a residential realtor.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a reflection on the skill, expertise, or qualifications of one type of realtor or the other, but the same is true as between a residential builder and a commercial builder, or a real estate attorney and a divorce attorney. There are differences.
Well, I'm for one, what I'm seeing is we're committing to $2,500 on the one, and on the other, we're not committing to do anything at this point other than say, if we move forward, we'll move forward with this firm. And I'd be comfortable with both of those.
Anyone else?
I agree with Joe. I'm pretty comfortable with both of them. I think we should do it as soon as possible.
So it sounds like we're gonna put this on the consent agenda, right, Mrs. Munson?
Yes, I actually do have a motion already written up, by Guy. I'm not sure that was shared with anybody. I can't remember at this point, honestly, because I just found out about this recently. I can either read the motion now, or when we get to the consent agenda, I could read it then, whatever everybody's preference is.
We're gonna read the motion now, you know, let's vote on it.
It's another vote. I mean, I don't care, you can do
I
that.
don't care, whatever you wanna do. Whatever you wanna do.
I can read it when we go to get to the consent
All right,
agenda.
why don't we just do that? Why don't we just put on the consent agenda, and when it's time, Mrs. Munson can read it, we'll go from there, okay?
Guy says thumbs up.
All right, move on. We have another famous person in Lansing. Mike Mosley is here for this highway superintendent report. Mikey?
Good evening, everybody.
How you doing?
Good. I wish it wasn't snowing. I wish we didn't have to go out and add some salt to the roads today, but we break down the trucks one way and start spraying and then reconfigure for snow. It's that time of year. Pretty much my report's there for everyone to read. Anybody has any questions, happy to answer them. I think Mike Sigler touched on what I've been working on with Dondi at TG Miller and CJ with the Doug Road Bridge, and trying to get grant money for that through Bridge New York. That process is underway, and we'll see where we go with that. That's about it, really.
Any questions for Mike?
I just hope this is the last snowfall of the season like you do, because I know you guys are like going through tons and tons of salt. I see those bills go by.
Yes, unfortunately. Early morning tomorrow to see if how the roads are, I guess, and hopefully that's the last time until we get to fall.
Thanks.
Yes. Oh, one last thing. I almost forgot. I actually wanted to start with this. As some of you know, if not all of you know, Mike Milliman recently retired beginning this month. I'd like to take this time to congratulate him on his retirement, wish him well. He committed 31 years of service to the town of Lansing. I had the benefit of working 19 years with Mike. Outstanding employee, great guy, will be missed. Definitely wish him well.
Yes, ditto. Excellent skill set, went out above and beyond. He and his brother and I had the pleasure of putting all those pickets together by the fence for the playground. And that was a fun time. I enjoy working with them. They have, like I said, they take a lot of pride in their work, and it shows. He, like a lot of the highway department, their fingerprints are over a lot of these different projects that other towns wish they had. But these people really push the envelope, and it's much appreciated on that. And it's well earned. He's going to have a nice retirement. He's going to have good benefits, well earned, enjoy it. We take very good of our employees. We ask a lot of them, but we get a lot of value for them, but we also treat them well. So good for him. Okay, thanks. Moving on. CJ, I see you only got a couple of things on the thing here for you. Didn't add quite a lot. Thanks for keeping it down to only 2 pages instead of the usual 4.
Almost ran over, but I said, I'll just chop it up. And also same as Mike, if there's any questions, certainly I'm happy to answer, but the report kind of just speaks for itself.
No, we got a lot of changes. We got a lot of changes going up in the next few. We have a little transition going on, right? Looking for.
Yeah, and I could just provide a really quick update on the hiring process. We've got quite a few candidates for both positions. So we're doing initial screenings and some interviews, and I couldn't be happier with that process. And it's been nice also to develop the questions with Lynn. That's been really fun to come up with the list of interview questions and talk about candidates. And you should have received, if not yet, but very soon, his official letter of resignation. He'll have 20 years of service with the town on June 11th. So we'll keep you posted.
Good. Another one, well done. Okay, thank you. Any questions for CJ? Robin?
I do. CJ, I noticed that you said you referred the overlay districts to different committees, and I'm just kind of wondering where things stand, what the timeline looks like for that, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's a good question. The first action was to refer this to the Conservation Advisory Council because they are working on a scenic inventory.
Right.
Perhaps Andra could speak more to, but I think you probably heard quite a bit from them just now. Also referred the overlay district, the Cuba Lake Byway overlay district, to planning board. If you'd like, I can send just a real quick clip. Well, it's not that quick, but the first portion of the last planning board meeting on Monday, April 12th. So that was about a week and a half ago. We asked the representatives from Cuba Lake Scenic Byway to come and actually speak to planning board to give a sense of overall, what are the goals of the byway? What does it look like? What are other municipalities doing? What are they doing? How can we help implement some of the vision there? And so I can send board members, can send all of you. Although I think Joe and Doug were in attendance, but I can certainly send the clip to the rest of you to explain essentially the significance of that. How fast that will move along will depend on a lot of other things. And that's hopefully something I'll get to talk to you about in work session tonight, because we're going to have to choose potentially whether I'm going to, apply for grants or, do some of that kind of work. So.
I'll use that as a segue.
Thanks.
I'll use that as a segue in the fact that it's a unique situation now with all these pots of money coming back in full force, and sometimes actually going back into last year also, such as the potential reimbursements for 8% of the CHIPS money. And these are going to be time sensitive and the windows are tight. And I would ask people to give CJ some space because she's scrambling trying to get these in now. I think there's a deadline very shortly here, less than a month for some of these. And I'm not mean that these other products aren't important, they are. But this is the window for some of these grants. And like I said, the potential is huge on the upswing for this. So all I'm asking is just be a little bit patient as we try to prioritize this, okay? Plus the fact she's trying to revamp 50% of her department at the same time, which is not an easy task. Still maintain. Everybody wants the building permit this afternoon, which is wonderful. I mean, we're just banging stuff away. So that's all for now.
If I could just jump in real quick to Bronwyn's question. Joe asked me something of a similar question. Joe, if it's okay with you, we can correspond about that. But I did write up a little blurb about examining that scenic byway plan, speaking with those representatives at the May 10th working meeting with planning board, a series of questions alongside visuals relative to disposition of buildings. And then also kind of course, to tie it all together, the whole fun new land use, the cannabis adult use, and kind of where planning board is weighing in on that, which I guess has kind of an interesting intersection with the scenic tourism. But and nevertheless, I'll just check in with Joe about that, and then I'm happy to circulate that and just the facts about it, hopefully, so it's not too consuming information.
I would just add that I think everyone should listen to that clip from the planning board, because I think the woman from the scenic byway gave a lot of really good information about the byway. I learned a lot more about it than I've ever known, and I've been reading about it.
Yeah, same here. I thought it was extremely educational. Gave it a much different perspective than I think a lot of people think it is, in a positive sense. Okay. Anything else before we move on? Okay. Engineers report, and then our ag committee report. We're moving on to item 15, which is our world famous consent agenda. And Mrs. Munson will guide me through this because I always stub my toe on this.
Okay, so I will change the lettering, and F will become motion 21-11, and that will read as follows. Motion to approve and authorize consulting and agency agreement. Motion to approve the contract submitted by Larry Berger, Llama Real Estate, to provide professional, financial, operational, and real estate analysis of potential land and facilities purchased by town, as well as real estate agency agreement for negotiation of terms and assistance with an offer and potential closing upon such land and facilities, and to authorize the town supervisor to execute the same. And then everything will stay the same. It'll just be moved down one letter. So for example, the resolution hiring the part-time seasonal employees for the parks will become G, and so on.
Okay, thank you. Do I need a motion now?
Usually you have somebody read the first 2 or 3, go all the way down through, and then we have the motion at the end.
We read first.
Yeah.
Okay, Andre, you want to read the first 3?
Sure. Okay, the consent agenda. A, motion authorizing town of Lansing supervisor to sign Lansing Youth Services 2021 agreement. And the terms of the agreement are between January 1st and December 31st. B, motion authorizing town of Lansing supervisor to sign Insuro and Company CPA's LLP engagement letter. C, motion authorizing stormwater operating management and reporting agreement for Bazinga Holdings LLC.
Okay, I'll do the next 2. Motion authorizing stormwater operating management and reporting agreement for Lansing Renewables LLC. The next one is motion authorizing stormwater operating management and reporting agreement for Cuba Lake National Bank. Mrs. Munson, you want to do the next one?
The next one is motion to approve and authorize consulting and agency agreement.
Okay, Doug, you want to do the next 2?
So what letter are we on here?
We're on the one for hiring the seasonal employees for the
Okay.
park.
Resolution hiring part-time seasonal employees for Parks and Recreation Campground Manager for the town of Lansing. A resolution endorsing pre-application of SDM Rentals Incorporated to Times County Industrial Development Agency, Lansing Town Center Incentive Zone Program. And H, and then resolution accepting resignation of Eileen Stout and appointing Ethan Budnarek to the Town of Lansing Advisory Committee on Power Plant Future.
Looks like it leaves us 3, correct? Okay. Brown, can you do the next 3, please?
Sure. Resolution authorizing town supervisor to execute independent contractor agreement with Susan Munson for 2021 administrative services for the Planning and Code Enforcement Department. And resolution accepting Lynn Day's retirement letter as the Town of Lansing Code Enforcement Officer and authorizing the direct to hire a Town of Lansing zoning/code/fire enforcement officer and an additional Town of Lansing planner. And approve audit and budget modifications and supervisors report.
Okay. I think that's it.
I'll move that we accept the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
I'll second.
Was
It was everybody.
Any further discussion?
No discussion.
No, it's a consent agenda. Isn't it?
No
Okay,
discussion.
Mrs.
Andrew Benson,
Yes.
Doug Day,
Yes.
Ron Winlosi,
Yes.
Joseph Wetmore,
Yes.
Edward Levine.
Yes. Okay, item 16 in your packet is the resolution authorizing supervisor to execute independent contractor agreement with Clarity Connect Incorporated to develop electronic mapping deliverable identifying broadband underserved areas.
Didn't we have someone on the privilege of the floor that want to talk about this?
I think we can bring it up to discussion. Or I can talk about it now, it doesn't matter to me.
I'll move the resolution.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Okay, do we have Chuck Bartosh on the line?
No, he actually just emailed me and let me know he is at an event, some kind of, he was
Okay.
able to be in the privilege of the floor earlier, but he can't attend right now, so. That was.
Is there any discussion about this motion? I do, and it's just for once again, no pun intended, it's for clarity. The fact that his company does some of this as a living. I just want to make it known that his company does this, maybe potential competition, and that any results that are found will be public information for everyone to view immediately. And if we have to post those results on the web, I would like to do that. My personal feeling is that his heart's in the right place. He's trying to do this. I think if someone is available to do this work now, which any work we can do will add to it, which is one of the charges of the broadband committee. I just want to make sure that the perception isn't that there is some awkwardness here, shall we say. Okay, that's the only thing I want to about this violation, be upfront about it, that they're doing this or I'll say on the goodness of their heart, so we say, right? As a committee member, that information will be available to everyone. I don't know how you want to word that, Mrs. Munson. I babbled on a little bit there, but if it's okay with us, the board, to make this information available on the website as soon as it gets tabulated, shall we say? Okay.
I'm fine with that.
Okay. One more thing I'll say about the broadband, which I find interesting, is that as you go through your analysis here, talking to someone else who does broadband or does other things, is that the government has a classification when they look about internet, is that if in the past, if one person had internet on their road, they were deemed as everyone having internet. So it's so critical to make sure that everyone doesn't. So that's why it's so important that you dig deeper into this, what you're doing. It's much appreciated. So thank you. So we have a motion, we have a second, we've had discussion, and now Mrs. Munson?
Aye.
Andrew Benson,
Yes.
Doug Day,
Yes.
Ron Losey,
Yes.
Joseph Wetmore,
Yes.
Edward Levine.
Yes. Board member reports, do you have anything, Andrew?
No, the two reports that were written are ones I do, and then Carrie did an excellent job talking about the CAC.
Okay, thank you.
I'm having trouble hearing Andra.
She's done.
She's done.
She's done, and well, go ahead, say a little louder.
Okay, what I said, Joe, is the two written reports in our packet are the committees that I represent, and then Carrie did an excellent job explaining everything that the CAC is doing.
Good, okay, Bronwyn?
Sure. So the broadband committee, we just voted on one of the main things we were doing, and then we're also going to work on a request for proposal to do this renegotiation with Spectrum, and everything else is covered in Joe's report. Friends of Salt Point has their cleanup day on May 8th from 9 to 12, and we'd love anyone and everyone to come join and help out. There's an egg in the nest, in the osprey nest, so there's lots of excitement about that. The Friends of Salt Point is working with Pat and giving feedback about the recommendations that have come through from the Parks Master Plan. The Lansing Advisory Committee on the Power Plant Future, I think everybody got sort of the report of what's been done over the last year. Some clarification about kind of what's happening right now is a lot of discussion about cryptocurrency, and I actually wasn't able to make most of the last meeting, so CJ, please correct me if I'm reporting something incorrectly, but and that they're going to work on a draft law to bring to us to consider, so we can get out ahead of this instead of having to be reactionary once something's already in the works, so we can start to kind of see what we as a town want to do about that. The IO, Joe ended up having the whole report under his TCOG report, and we're now starting discussions about the DAC recommendation about the total maximum daily load of phosphorus and giving feedback to that. And so we can both learn information and then be a source of information for people about that. So that's what I've got from my end.
Thank you. Doug?
As far as the planning board, CJ covered it very nicely, a lot better than I could babble through. So in her report, so I'll let, and then if Joe wants to chime in, he certainly can. The Water Sewer Advisory Board, we had a meeting on the 7th, and Ed, you can feel free to chime in with this too. Easements for our sewer district number 1 with the village were sent to the DOT. There was a change in the pipe alignment for reasons of, what's the word I'm looking for? Easements, yep. And then we asked Dave Herrick about status of our sewer meters. He's still working with a vendor for Bush Lane. Analysis for sewer or water district number 3. Mr. Herrick said that analysis on material for water district number 3 and the proposed debt service, there is no contingency because the cost of materials has risen 10%. We still plan on mapping and surveying and procure materials. Many of you saw the boring under Pruville Road at the end of Armstrong Road. That is complete. Lansing Station Road talked about a water agreement and don't know if they'll go through with it. I guess it's off the table at this point. And that's all I got.
Okay, Joe?
I gave most of my report in the packet. I just want to thank the staff for all the stuff they've been doing. I love seeing the Peter Wheeler plaque up, and both Pat and CJ were instrumental in getting that together. And I'm also really excited at seeing the Doug Road issue coming up. I was very concerned when I heard that they got no emergency services because of the bridge. And so, I've been talking with CJ and seeing how we could move some money forward. And when the Bridge New York funding came around, she jumped right on that. And I'm glad to see that we're moving forward because I want to see those folks have the same emergency services that the rest of the town has.
Okay, thank you.
That shout out should go to Highway, by the way, because they're the ones who reminded me. So
excellent. Well,
Just
thank you too, Mike.
A couple of things here. I'm going to add a little bit to what Doug Dake said about the Wasabi meeting in Water District number 3. One of the reasons the materials are up is because of COVID. It's a direct result. And if we ever get the money from the relief bill, I would urge some of that money may go towards that district because of that exact reason. Now, granted, you don't have to, if it's infrastructure, you could just go ahead and use it for water lines. You don't have to have it as a direct result. But in all fairness, that contingency is gone because the price of pipe has gone up probably 4 to 5 times. Is that right, Mike? Am I close with that? Yeah, I mean, it's amazing how the price that now, hopefully by next year, when the survey is all done and we're ready to move forward on this, the price will drop down so much. So we're watching that very closely, still moving forward with the survey and everything. Well, that is something for the board to consider because this was a direct impact. Just like when Cricket and Mike decided to cut $200,000 out of the road improvement money from last year because of direct result of COVID also. So those are 2 areas that I would hope that the board would consider allocating if it comes to that. We're still waiting for the guidelines, by the way. CJ and I went on another webinar. I guess it was lunch with Sarah, right, CJ, as we say? And we haven't heard anything yet. So we're still trying to find out about that. The supervisors meet every month on a Zoom meeting. We're sharing information back and forth. There's nothing there. 2 more things. You have been sent the Moody's report on the investment of the health of the town. It's AA3, very healthy, very low debt. You can read it yourself as far as the analysis goes. Financially, we're in a very strong position. And all that information is there for you. And number 3, quickly, because finances is one of the things I'm supposed to do, I guess, as the unofficial CFO of the town, is that you look at the sales tax. Do not be that concerned about it, because if you look at these numbers, what we projected this year compared to last year, it is roughly a 15% decrease. And when we compare the first 2 months of January to January and February to February last year, this year, that last year's numbers were pre-COVID. It'll be interesting to see what the next ones going forward are post-COVID or during COVID. So we'll see if they're going to be different or not. The first month, I think, is around 15%. I think the decrease. The second one was around 8% decrease. So the projections are, even though the government's going to take $500,000 off the top to fund the funds for hospitals that are in debt as a sort of a safety net for them. The projection is we're going to be much healthier than last year. And once again, last year, Tompkins County was the hardest hit of all the counties in New York State with sales tax. We're the ones that exhibited the most impact, and ours was around 4.5% when everything's said and done. So we're very frugal with our money. But anyway, that's all I have to say for that. We got to get going. And Mrs. Muntz is smiling at me when I say that.
Me too.
Okay. So shall we go into I think we talked about the grant overview. CJ, you want to touch on these briefly? We're going to the work session. I mean, we kind of touch base on the ARC grant overview and the bridge a little bit, but if you want to go deeper into this, I think we have a few minutes to go ahead and do that.
Yeah, so I'll just briefly mention Bridge New York. We're planning to apply for a culvert on Drake Road, as well as the bridge on Doug Road for the funding. The county is going to chip in the 5% that the state is not going to pay out of the total project costs, which are 95%, right? Do I have that right? 95%, I think the state is paying. Okay, so that's number one. Also coming up is the CDBG CV money, which it's CV stands for coronavirus, of course. And that money can be used. It's kind of crazy because, you know, there's no money and then there's like every grant program in the world. It seems to be open right now. Towns, cities, and villages eligible projects, 100,000, maximum of $500,000. They can be used for small business assistance, public infrastructure, housing improvements, and public services. I'm still doing some brainstorming on what types of projects might be best for this. I'm thinking what I'll do is put an email together to town board, brief with just bullet points, concise points, and maybe a couple suggestions on how we could use that funding. Also coming up is the ARC area-wide development. That is essentially economic development funding. That's going to be due in short order. That is a really long federal application. Probably just want to skip that one right now. But my understanding is, and what I'm hearing is that the CFA is coming back. And along with that is supposed to be money through Parks 100. So one effort that we're doing specifically is making sure we're collaborating with Parks to make sure that the Parks Recreation and Trails Master Plan includes language about regional flagships like Myers that we went for last time. Of course, we lost out to another Town of Lansing project, but that's a different story from the WQIP application we put in a couple of years ago. But my understanding is the consolidated funding application is coming back, and we're getting ourselves in a good position to be able to apply for those funds when they become available. I'm hoping to hear about that within the next few months. And that's really the highlights as far as grants go. As for the ARPA funding, I did just correspond a bit with Charmaine today to reassure her that yes, we do have a SAM account. So that's a awards management account through the feds. And so with that, we're good to go. Between that and a DUNS number, we can receive federal funds directly. So we're fine. We have that covered.
Okay. Any questions for CJ? The only one I have is don't burn her out. Please, please, please. She's, you
Okay,
know, she's gonna work as hard as, she's gonna work on, I mean, she'll work till she drops. I mean, she's that kind of person. So, like I said, just be selective on questions you have for her, okay? I don't have anything for executive session. I do have something for closed session. And I don't think Mrs. Munson has to stay. But Patrick has. No, you don't have to stay.
I would like to talk about litigation issues. So I'm not sure if that's the same thing Ed's wanting to talk about.
Well, closed session is being advice from the attorney. If it's litigation, that might be executive session. We also need to take a 5-minute break.
And just to be clear, the executive session rule for litigation basically means imminent, threat, and pending. Not you may be doing something that's at some point down the road may result in litigation. There's got to be some like immediacy to it. So I don't know what the subject matter is, but I suspect it's the same, and therefore probably just getting the legal advice would be the next step. But I'll defer to Joe because I don't really know.
It's what we've been discussing over email.
I closed session is technically more appropriate. I'm not sure it's a distinction with a difference, but that's how the open meetings law works.
So can we go into closed session? I don't know if I need a motion in a second, but can we do this in about maybe what, 10 minutes?
I do believe we need a motion in a second. I don't know how much explanation we need other than just to say closed session for
For
legal
advice
advice.
of counsel, that's all you need to say. Move into closed session for advice of counsel, move it and second it, and then take your break if you want to. Just, don't conduct business during the break.
I'll move it.
I moved it and Joe seconded it.
Yeah, wait a minute.
8:17. I'm sorry you had to leave so early, Mrs. Munson.
All in favor?
Aye.
So,
Anyone opposed?
no, I'm out of here.